I kind of want to start with the people who lack an internal monologue.
Yeah.
Have
Yeah.
you seen this at all? Like, have you seen this in the discourse?
Yeah. As like a pithy kind of like funny kind of thing, yes. I've never seen it taken quite as seriously as the Twitter video you sent me where it was like it was like 60 minutes level hard-hitting independent journalism, dude. It was pretty impressive.
Let's watch a second of this. I'm gonna
Yeah.
drop it in.
All right. So I found out a few days ago that not everyone has the ability to speak in their brain. And the first person that I asked if they could do it was her. And turns out she can't. So I asked a bunch of people to ask me questions so I could ask her so she could try to make light of this wild situation. So, like, if you look, like, I could look at myself in the mirror, talk
Right.
in my head without opening my mouth. You physically can't do that.
No.
And what would happen if you tried to do that?
I have tried to do that since learning that an internal monologue exists, and I end up speaking out loud to myself. So most of my conversations are out loud.
I feel like this information to the people that can think in their head is a lot more like exciting news. I've talked to a few people that can't do this, and they seem less enthused as the people that do have this internal monologue.
Correct.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm very confused as to why people are so perplexed
All right,
by
so
it.
the probably most requested question was, how do you read? Like, when I read, I hear the words in my head. I don't know how you could possibly read without not hearing the words.
When I read, I can see the sentence structure. Like in my head, every sentence has a shape, so you can see like the shape of the sentence. And then also like keywords will pop out, and I can file those away into my like concept map. So at the end of reading something, I can have a concept map of the main topics that I read about. And I tend to move my lips when I read. So like essentially I'm saying it out loud, but it's just not like audible.
So, do you visualize the setting when you're reading a book?
No, it's not like images. It's just the words.
So, do you like reading like fiction books, like where you have to put yourself in a situation?
I never really enjoyed reading.
At
and
all?
I think maybe that's why. Like I can see the story plot.
Are you a fast reader?
Yes, very fast reader.
We could have a 100-question test. She's done when I'm on question 12. I'm not even kidding. It is superhuman. It's not fair. How do you know what you're thinking if there's no words?
Because I can see it.
I think that's why this whole thing is going viral, is because people like me can't understand how you get through a day without talking to yourself.
I don't know. I just feel like the information is in there, and I can pull it forward if I wanted. Like it's all just like it's like files. There's categories of information in my head, and I can pull them to the front if I need them. But
I feel like I could do that. Like if I'm studying, I could like pull things out. But just like if I'm sitting and like I have a thought, or someone is like walking by and I have a thought about that person, I'm like talking to myself about that. Does that not happen to you?
no. If I have a thought, normally I say it out loud.
I can't do this. Do you daydream often?
No, never. Hardly ever. I can't think of a time that I've daydreamed, I don't think.
Do you dream at night?
Yes.
And are they normal dreams? Do you hear dialogue in those dreams?
I don't think so, actually.
Do you enjoy being alone? I like this question.
Yeah, I do.
So, like, if you don't have anything in front of you, like no stimulus, what is going on in your head?
Oh, I always have to be doing stuff. Like if I'm alone, I'm cleaning, I'm cooking, I'm like watching Netflix, I'm studying. But I hardly ever just, like I don't just sit there alone.
Do you have any theories on this yourself? / do you even care?
I don't
It
really
seems
care.
like
This feels really normal to me.
I can't even do this because I can't wrap my head around this. But she is so nonchalant about it, it makes me uncomfortable.
I actually have a couple of really interesting thoughts on this.
Me too.
I
Yeah,
I,
let's
I
hear it.
think you want mine first?
Yeah, go for it.
I think uh, for normal people, we all have like a primary internal monologue, which is when you're reading or whatever, and you ask yourself a question where you're like, oh, what do I think about this? Or one of his questions is like, well, if you're on a date, how do you know if you like someone or not? Because you're not going, oh, you know, he kind of picked up his fork a little weird. You know, it's like we do. I think most of us do have like a Seinfeld monologue in our head. Oh, you know, big hands, you know. But my experience with shame, and particularly like shame and depression and some of the darker emotional states in life, is that they have a lot more to do with this like secondary monologue of things you can't hear that you're saying to yourself. And what I want to know is how is she able to internalize or externalize a concept like shame or embarrassment or guilt, which are so kind of heavily reliant on like the little ticker tape of things that you say to yourself, like, I'm not good enough, you know? And it's like there's nobody can get away from that. Nobody's perfectly baked in the kiln to where they're not insecure about anything. And I think that the very kind of meat of the concept of insecurity relies on this like secondary monologue of things that you tell yourself without knowing that you're saying it to yourself. So that's my question to this young lady, is how does she feel things like that? And I wonder if she's got a little secondary monologue, but it's just like a little ticker tape of like images or something like that.
Okay, so I want to jump in with my thoughts, but yeah, that's all very fascinating, especially this shame thing. That's very interesting to
Right?
me. I haven't thought about that. But
Yeah.
so supposedly it's 30 to 40% of the population that doesn't have an internal monologue. So it's not like just this
Whoa.
woman. It's 30 to 40% of the population.
Wow.
And okay, I have two main thoughts that I want to throw out there. The first thought is that I wonder how many things that we boil down to other diagnoses are actually this. And just for a simple one, I mean, like, the ability
That's so fucking true, dude. Holy shit. The
the ability-
implications.
yeah. So like the ability to read and enjoy fiction, right? Like a lot of times you'll see someone who's like, I hate reading books. This is actually on Twitter the last couple of weeks. I've had one person come on my timeline saying, I hate poetry. And another person who is like a tech CEO saying, I hate fiction. I can't believe anyone would actually waste their time reading fiction. And it's like, okay, probably this person isn't like a moron who can't like appreciate maybe the greatest form of art. Maybe it's that like he just can't enjoy it because his brain processes words in a different way and he's not able to jump into it in a way that you would if you had an internal monologue. Because for me, like reading is that like my internal monologue is tied to being able to read very fundamentally, I feel like.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a simple one, but also other things like dyslexia that you mentioned, or like just personality differences. Like my parents have very radically different personalities, but like if you talk to my mom, you just know automatically that she has a very rapid fire internal monologue, just like me, and her brain will not settle down ever,
Right.
just like me.
Same.
Whereas my dad, I can picture him, I've never asked him, but I can picture him not having an internal monologue. And sometimes when they have like personality conflicts, that my mom will like diagnose it as one thing or another, like very quickly, because that's like what she does. Now I'm thinking maybe all that is nonsense, and maybe my dad just doesn't have an internal monologue. And not to belabor the point too much, but like how many like clinical diagnoses that we have on the books might actually have something to do with this. And maybe I will flesh this out just a teeny bit more, which is that like, so Sam Harris gave a talk, it was like a full video a couple of years ago, and it was about meditation. And he starts out this video saying, we all have this crazy voice in our head, and all we need to do, like, we just can't get it to shut the fuck up. Like, what is, and he's talking as if everybody has this. So clearly this guy with a PhD in neuroscience wasn't aware that this was a phenomenon. So like, and I didn't know about it. I was like, degree, I didn't know about this until like very recently that this was a phenomenon. So maybe society itself is cut into two for people who have an internal monologue and they don't go into the arts, versus people who have an internal monologue, they go into all the art. So maybe those people wrote all the books, all the movies, et cetera, and like, I just interact with people who have an internal monologue, and the people to maybe, I don't know, do coding or like physics or hard sciences, they're all doing their thing that's not reliant on an internal monologue to appreciate that art form or whatever.
I think I'm like kind of it makes me want to
Just blows your
do.
mind, right? At some level, right? Doesn't it blow your mind?
It doesn't seem possible. It
Yeah.
doesn't really, like, it's strict in like a strictly like anthropologically linguistic way. It seems like patently impossible.
This is my next point, how I think it might be possible. I want to drill on that next, but
Please,
it's
yeah,
speculation. So
help me.
okay, so I'll go into it. Are you familiar with Julian Jaynes and his theory of the bicameral mind?
Mm-hmm.
The breakdown of the bicameral mind.
Mm-hmm.
So I read the book a couple of months ago, thick ass book, and I even read like a supplement to it. Like I got obsessed with this concept because it's so mind blowing. It's another one of these things that if it is true,
It's wild.
It's just a theory, but if it is true, everything is topsy turvy, upside down.
Right.
And the very quick gist of the concept is that, let's just say we have religion, the idea of religion, because when humans were evolving early on, thousands of years ago, we had a voice in our heads that told us to do things, and we only ever really took action aside from like day-to-day normal stuff that doesn't require any sort of like direction. But if we were to say like marry this woman or go out in the field and like a very specific thing, it was the voice of God talking to us because it was a voice that we heard in our heads, and it's associated with certain parts of our brain. And if you go back and read like the Iliad, there is zero internal monologue with people. There's no consciousness.
Sure.
No one ever, like, there's no character who ever says, I really felt like doing this and it was so meaningful to me. There's none of that. Or any ancient text for that matter. This is the claim. Yeah, it's like this happened, then this happened, then this happened.
Right.
God spoke.
Which is why I personally found it insufferable. I tried to read it after the Odyssey and I was like, oh, fuck this.
That's interesting. I actually loved it, but I read it first. But like I loved like the epicness of like Agamemnon was told to do this and he did it. Like I actually sensed that was a part of this book way before I learned about
it. It felt too Tolkien for me, where it was like it would go on for pages describing like the minutia of something. I'm just like, yeah, I'm out, dude.
Yeah, I think you had to skim through some of that shit. That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. But to bring this home with the whole people who have no internal monologue thing, I think that Julian Jaynes's theory, I think that you could apply that here. And I don't know exactly how, but there's something like maybe people who have an internal monologue, maybe the bicameral mind hasn't broken down fully for them, like us, like you and me. Maybe we still hear kind of like voices, the remnants of this, but it's now an internal monologue where it used to be the voice of God, right? And so people who don't have the internal monologue, they're just fundamentally more efficient humans because they're not bogged down by this weird talking to yourself thing that happens. Okay, I'm not buying that fully, but let's just say that that's a theory that I think is maybe applicable. Anyway,
I like
so that might explain it, right?
Wow, way to bring us into way to tie that in pretty nicely. That's interesting. Yeah, because I guess, oh man, I'm riddled with thoughts on this, to be completely honest. I just don't think there's a way that you can conceptualize reality without the ability to assign words to symbols, and you can't assign the word to the symbol.
I think that you can. I think because you can intellectualize it. Like this girl on that video, she talked kind of specifically, I think, about how she saw sentences as a very structured thing.
Right.
That's like a different way of applying meaning.
It is, but not at its core, because a table is still a table to her. It's not, and the reason it's a table is because it's called a table. There is no tableness of any. There's no immutable property of anything. It's just the naming of the thing that gives it the ability for us to reference it. Honestly, the ability for us to consider it to be real. Like we're so.
She can talk about it. She just can't talk to herself about it. So she could talk.
But she can see the picture of it. But she can see the picture of it in her mind. So it's like I don't know.
We're just talking about language. We're just talking about language, right?
Yeah, but it's not. If she We
I mean, I'd be getting your
we
point,
gotta
honestly.
fucking find one of these people, man.
I know. I think
We
it
gotta
might be. I think I
put
might
him
know
up.
some.
If you're please, if you're listening to the
Oh
pod
shit!
right
Can
now,
I actually throw out a theory of mine?
yeah, please.
I think that people who are very into psychedelics might be some of these people. I know a friend who like has zero anxiety about taking heavy psychedelics, like a ton of them.
Oh.
And I think like I am terrified of taking psychedelics. I've done
Every
like
time.
microdoses of things.
Me too,
And
yeah.
it's because like the second a drug is in my body, I start thinking and thinking and thinking about like what's going to happen next. Am I ready for this next? And it's all internal. But I have a friend, Vincenzo, who like he can just like gobble down psychedelics, and he's
He
like
would be a
dumbfounded.
candidate for no internal monologue. But see, here's here's the thing that I was interested by was immediately when I think it's so funny. This is such like a racism of the mind, but it's like I think when you have one, if you think of a person, if you try to conceptualize a person that doesn't have one, you think I think you think of like a hillbilly,
Or
you know,
yeah.
like a mental hillbilly or somebody that's just like. And I saw these two girls in a convertible yesterday in San Francisco, and literally the one girl, they're like 18, like hot young 18-year-old girls just like doing their thing, and literally like they both their head movements, it was just like a chicken. It was just like, and they were kind of like chewing like gum, you know, like, but it was like very like, you know what I mean? And I was like, as soon as you brought this up for a topic today, I was just like immediately thought of those girls, because I'm like, yeah, man, I don't know. But what's crazy is this girl that's on this interview is like really smart. She's like not, it's not a disability for her. It just is. It's just a different conceptual framework for reality.
This may be very intelligent people like Elon Musk.
Yeah,
I could see him
maybe the
having it.
most. Maybe that they're not, and maybe, you know, the thing about shame, the shame part, maybe they're not as beleaguered by the concept. Maybe they're not beleaguered by philosophical concepts much at all, because maybe all shame is to them is a collection of the memories that they can remember that were embarrassing or shameful or something like that, that there is no secondary intellectualization or, you know, emotional attachment to the, or I don't know, fuck man, I don't know.
Dude, this is so like.
But let me get let me hammer my point of why I potentially don't think that this is possible, is that the
I love her like, no, it can't be possible.
Like I think it's possible that they can't say words, but the part about it's like, then what are we saying a word is? Because if you can think
I haven't thought about this.
If you can think of a table, it's a table to you. It's not, you had to have learned what a table was by calling it that, right? And every
Can I
single
sort of
time,
articulate my thought on this?
yeah, and every single time you call it a table, you're referencing the word, whether you're thinking of the object or saying it, because those two things for every person on earth are irreconcilably attached. You cannot conceptualize the thing without a name for it. Which is why, when we're when people are starved of the ability to learn language, they become physically unwell. Like,
no, so let me maybe kind of articulate my thought on this, because I have thought about this. Now that I think that I'm understanding this point better. So I tried this the other day after I initially watched this video. I tried to, because the most startling thing about her, I mean, there were a lot of it, honestly, but is the idea that like she won't think before she speaks. Her speaking is her thinking. And so I just kind of tried this in a conversation. Someone says something, and I just respond, and then say something and just respond. That is actually what happens. It wasn't hard. It wasn't natural at all.
I think that's how we all talk. I don't think you can think
even now
I'm
like
that's
doing
insane.
it in my head.
Well, I was as you were saying it, I'm like, that's what we've been doing this whole time.
Okay, so pull it back a little bit more of like, when I am alone and my internal monologue is happening, it's the same thing. It's not like there's it's not like a different layer of something. It's just like my thinking is the thing. So like in terms of like your table,
happening. Yeah,
there's nothing missing. It's like I'm whether it's in my head or my verbal I'm
Yeah.
verbalizing. It's exactly the same thing. I'm describing
Yeah.
the table, and I understand the table in exactly the same way, right?
Maybe these people are just dyslexic, dude. Like,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
honestly, like, because I just don't like. Please,
It
somebody,
it
please
does sound
somebody.
so bad, like these people, right?
I know, right?
Sounds
These people, dude. Yeah, like our in 20 years, our new indentured servant class.
Or like we're gonna be the in servanted
Oh my God,
ones
I know. We're the least, we're the less efficient group. Civil War, dude.
reading our fucking novels. Like,
Oh, right. Dude, that's funny. They won't even have to like keep us in prison or anything. They'll just give us like shit to keep us anxious. And we're supposed to all be paralyzed by anxiety, dude. Free coffee
okay,
for everyone.
so I could actually talk about this all day. I do want to jump to
Okay,
more
fair.
topics. I have one more thought that I want to say though, because this
Okay,
is just
yeah, hit
like,
me.
if you ever encounter one of these people, or if I do, this is the question that I would want to ask, I think. Are you just utterly confused nonstop by all the media that is out there? Because I've been thinking about like in
Oh.
every single song or like, yeah, book, or even just people talking casually, we always talk about our internal monologues nonstop. You know,
Mm,
like that song, I think it's
mm,
semi-sonic, like I can hear you singing to me in my sleep.
right.
Right? Like, how would someone who doesn't have an internal monologue think of that line in that song? Like, would they be like, he's making this up, this makes no
They just
sense?
hear it.
Or they just hear it and don't
They
think
just
about it, I
they just
guess?
hear it.
Is that it?
Honestly, I just don't think that I think it's a semantic difference. If I'm being honest with my best guess, like knowing a fair amount about how humans process language and how we conceptualize reality, like that's something I've studied legitimately. Not that I'm right, but I think it's just a semantic difference. I think they do have an internal monologue. It's just visual. It's like not. It's not textual.
That's a thing in terms of like another difference with humans and brains is that some people can't visualize anything, and some people
Right.
can have like a photographic memory, can absolutely visualize down to them. And by the way, like all human brains are super mega hardcore flawed whenever we do
Yeah.
any sort of a recall, or I don't know,
Oh
the whole thing
yeah.
is just so messy.
I
It's just so
love your
messy.
idea, your initial idea though, of like the overlay of this concept, because I think like broadly it could be applied in like an epidemiological way
Hmm.
to like metadata and studies and like boy, God, when AI gets just a little bit more advanced and you're able to be like, hey AI, can you take this conceptual framework and overlay it on all of the latest metadata? And it's gonna be like, like, oh, look at me, I'm a PhD candidate now.
Okay, let's wrap that topic up there. I want to jump to the
Mhm.
next topic today.